Captain James Morrison walked slowly across the metal floor of his ship's bridge. Through the large front window, he could see nothing but empty black space and distant stars. His ship, the UES Defiant, was alone out here at the edge of human territory. But James knew that would change very soon. "Captain," called Lieutenant Emma Brooks from her computer station. "I'm picking up something on long-range sensors." "It's big, sir." James moved over to look at her screen. The green dots appearing on the display made his stomach tighten. 1 dot became 2, then 5, then 20. Soon the screen was covered with so many green dots that they almost looked like a solid mass. "How many?" James asked quietly. Emma's fingers moved quickly over her keyboard. 200 ships, sir. Maybe more. They're coming out of hyperspace all around us." The bridge became very quiet. James could hear the soft hum of the ship's engines and the quiet beeping of computers. His crew of 1,200 people were scattered throughout the ship, and most of them had no idea what was about to happen. "Red alert," James said. "All hands to battle stations." The ship's lights dimmed and warning sirens began to sound. James watched through the window as the first alien ships appeared. They looked like huge crystals made of blue and white light. Each one was 3 times bigger than his ship. They moved with perfect grace, forming a circle around the Defiant like wolves surrounding their prey. "Incoming transmission," reported Lieutenant David Walsh from the communication station. "It's from the lead ship." "Put it on the main screen." The front window filled with the image of an alien creature. It had a tall, thin body covered in what looked like living crystal. Its face was sharp and angular, with glowing blue eyes that seemed to burn with cold fire. When it spoke, its voice was translated by the ship's computer into perfect English. "I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire," the alien said. "Human vessel, you have entered space that now belongs to us. By order of the Empire, you will surrender the star systems known to you as Tau Centauri, Wolf 359, and Kepler. These worlds are now part of our territory." James stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. "I am Captain James Morrison of the United Earthship Defiant. Admiral, those systems contain human colonies with millions of people. We cannot simply abandon them." The alien's crystal face twisted into what might have been a smile. "Cannot? Or will not? It matters little. Your species is young and weak. We have conquered 4 to 7 different races across this galaxy. You are nothing special." Behind Admiral Kethvar, James could see other aliens moving around what looked like a massive command center. Their technology was clearly far ahead of anything humans had built. Energy flowed through crystal conduits in the walls, and holographic displays showed information in languages James couldn't understand. "Look around you, human," the Admiral continued. 200 of our finest warships surround your single, pathetic vessel. Our weapons could turn your ship into dust in seconds. Our shields could stop anything you might fire at us. Surrender now, and your people may live as slaves in our empire." James felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his voice calm. "Admiral, I need time to consult with Earth Command about your demands. Give me 24 hours to send messages and receive instructions." The alien admiral threw back his crystal head and laughed. The sound was like breaking glass mixed with winter wind. Other aliens on his bridge joined in the laughter. 24 hours, the admiral said between laughs. "You want time to beg your leaders for help? Very well, primitive creature. We are feeling generous today. You have 1 day to prepare your surrender documents. Use the time wisely." The transmission ended, and the main screen went back to showing the view outside. James could see the alien ships positioning themselves in perfect battle formation. Their hulls glowed with energy, and he could see weapon ports opening along their sides. "Captain," Emma said quietly, "their energy readings are incredible. Each one of those ships has more firepower than our entire Pacific Fleet back on Earth." "I know," James replied. "David, send a priority message to Earth Command. Use authorization code Achilles Protocol." David's fingers stopped moving on his keyboard. "Sir, are you sure? That's the highest level classification we have." "I'm sure." "Send it now." As David worked, James looked around at his bridge crew. These were good people, men and women who had volunteered to explore the dangerous edges of human space. They trusted him to keep them alive, and now he was about to ask them to risk everything. "Emma, what do our scans tell us about their ships?" "Advanced energy weapons, quantum shields, and some kind of crystal-based computing system we don't understand. Their technology is at least 200 years ahead of ours, maybe more." James nodded. "And they know it. That's why they're so confident." Through the bridge windows, more alien ships continued to arrive. The space around the Defiant was becoming crowded with crystal vessels, each one beautiful and deadly. James could see smaller fighter craft moving between the larger ships like schools of glowing fish. Message sent, Captain, David reported. Earth Command should receive it in about 6 hours. Good. Now we wait. As the hours passed, James stood quietly on his bridge, watching the alien fleet grow larger. His crew worked at their stations, running diagnostics and preparing the ship systems. They all knew they were outnumbered and outgunned, but none of them showed fear. What the aliens didn't know was that the Defiant carried something special. Something that would change everything. James just had to wait for Earth's permission to use it. The clock was ticking, and in less than 24 hours, the galaxy would learn that humans were far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Admiral Kethvar stood in the center of his flagship's command room, surrounded by his top officers. The room was made of living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. Holographic displays showed the human ship floating helplessly in the middle of their formation like a tiny fish caught in a net. Look at this pathetic vessel, the Admiral said, pointing at the image of the Defiant. Their hull is made of simple metal. Metal? Can you believe it? We stopped using such primitive materials thousands of years ago. Commander Veltran, a tall alien with silver crystal skin, shook his head in amazement. Admiral, our scans show they still use chemical rockets for movement. Chemical rockets. My ancestors used better technology when we were still living in caves. The other officers laughed. The sound echoed through the crystal chamber like wind chimes in a storm. And their weapons, added Subcommander Zixtal, studying a tactical display. They have what they call kinetic cannons. They literally shoot pieces of metal at their enemies. It's like fighting with stones and sticks. Admiral Kethvar walked over to the main viewing screen. The human ship looked so small compared to his massive fleet. When I was young, my teacher told me stories about primitive races that still used solid projectiles. I thought they were just jokes to make us laugh. Sir, reported the communications officer, our intelligence team has been listening to their radio transmissions. Would you like to hear what they are saying? Put it through the speakers. This should be entertaining. The bridge filled with fragments of human voices, translated by their computers. The aliens listened as humans talked about conventional ordnance and tactical solutions and standard deployment procedures. The entire command crew burst into laughter. Conventional ordnance. Commander Veltran wiped tears from his crystal eyes. What are they planning to do, throw rocks at us? Maybe they'll use their ancient projectile weapons to scratch our paint, joked Subcommander Zixtal. Admiral Kethvar smiled coldly. I intercepted a message they sent to their homeworld. They're asking for permission to use something called Protocol Achilles. It sounds very serious and frightening, doesn't it? More laughter filled the command room. Meanwhile, on board the Defiant, Captain Morrison sat in his private quarters, reading classified files on his computer screen. The documents had arrived from Earth Command just 2 hours ago, and they made his hands shake slightly as he turned the pages. Dr. Rachel Thompson, the ship's chief scientist, sat across from him. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but her mind was one of the sharpest in human space. Captain, she said quietly, I've run the calculations 17 times. The mathematics are perfect. But sir, once we fire this weapon, there's no stopping it. Morrison looked at the technical diagrams on his screen. Dr. Thompson, explain to me one more time how this works. In simple terms. Rachel took a deep breath. We create a tiny black hole, Captain. Smaller than an atom at first. Then we shoot it at the target using a regular railgun. When it reaches the right distance, the magnetic containment field shuts off, and the black hole begins to grow. And it will consume the entire enemy fleet. Everything within 50,000 kilometers, sir. The gravitational pull becomes so strong that even light cannot escape. Their advanced shields, their energy weapons, their crystal hulls, none of it will matter. Physics doesn't care how advanced you are. Morrison closed the file and looked out his small window. He could see the alien ships moving in perfect formation, their hulls glowing with confident energy. They think we're primitive. They are correct, sir. Compared to their technology, we are primitive. But sometimes primitive solutions work better than complex ones. Back on the Zephyrian flagship, more intelligence reports were coming in. The alien officers gathered around their commander, eager to share what they had learned about human technology. Admiral, reported the intelligence chief, we've completed our analysis of their vessel. Their computer systems are based on something called silicon chips. Their engines burn liquid chemicals. Their life support uses mechanical air recyclers. It's like looking at a museum piece. How many crew members? Asked Commander Veltran. 1,200 humans, sir. Our smallest scout ship carries a crew of 3,000. Admiral Kethvar nodded approvingly. And their weapons? Kinetic projectiles, some explosive missiles, and what they call laser cannons. The lasers are barely strong enough to cut through our outer armor. Their missiles move so slowly we could shoot them down with our defensive systems turned off. The Admiral walked over to a tactical display that showed both fleets. His ships formed a perfect sphere around the lone human vessel. Each of his ships was marked in blue, while the human ship appeared as a tiny red dot in the center. Increase our fleet to 300 ships, he ordered. I want more vessels to arrive before the deadline. Let the humans see exactly how hopeless their situation is. Sir, isn't 300 ships excessive for dealing with one primitive vessel? The Admiral's eyes glowed brighter. I want to send a message to the entire galaxy. When other races see how easily we crush the humans, they will surrender without fighting. It will save us time and energy in future conquests. As more Zephyrian ships arrived throughout the day, the alien crew continued to monitor human communications. They heard humans talking about final preparations and weapon systems check and target confirmation. Listen to them, laughed Subcommander Zixtao. They actually think their primitive weapons can hurt us. It's almost sad. I feel sorry for them, added another officer. They're like children playing with toys, pretending to be warriors. Admiral Kethvar looked at the time display. 18 hours remaining. Soon the humans will realize that their only choice is surrender or death. And honestly, I'm not sure we'll give them the option to surrender. The alien officers laughed again, the sound echoing through the crystal chambers of their mighty ships. They had no idea that in less than 24 hours, their laughter would turn to screams of terror as the humans showed them what real power looked like. The hours passed slowly on board the Defiant. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge, watching as more alien ships continued to arrive. The space around his vessel was now crowded with over 300 crystal warships, each one glowing with deadly energy. They moved like a school of luminous fish, repositioning themselves in perfect military formation. Captain, reported Lieutenant Emma Brooks, the enemy fleet has reached 312 ships. They are forming multiple attack layers around us. Even if we wanted to run, there's no way out. Morrison nodded quietly. Through the main viewing window, he could see the alien vessels positioning themselves at different distances. The closest ships were only a few kilometers away, close enough that he could see individual weapon ports opening and closing along their crystal hulls like breathing. Sir, called Lieutenant David Walsh from communications, I'm picking up more alien transmissions. They're still laughing about our weapons. One of their commanders just called us metal insects that will be easily crushed. Let them think that, Morrison replied calmly. The more confident they are, the better this will work. In the ship's main engineering section, Chief Engineer Robert Hayes was making final preparations. The weapon bay had been sealed off from the rest of the ship, and only Hayes and Dr. Rachel Thompson were allowed inside. The room hummed with barely contained energy, and strange blue light flickered behind protective barriers. Doctor, Hayes said, wiping sweat from his forehead, the containment field is holding steady. But I have to ask, are you absolutely sure this thing won't destroy us too? Dr. Thompson checked her instruments for the 20th time that hour. The mathematics are clear, Robert. As long as we fire it at least 50,000 kilometers away from our position, we'll be safe. The gravitational effects take time to reach dangerous levels. And if your math is wrong? Rachel looked at him with tired but determined eyes. Then we die along with them. But Robert, if we don't do this, humanity dies anyway. The Zephyrians won't stop with those 3-star systems. They'll keep coming until they own everything. Hayes nodded and returned to his work. The weapon system was unlike anything humans had ever built before. It looked almost simple, just a metal tube connected to a magnetic railgun. But inside that tube was contained the most dangerous force in the universe, held in check by technology that pushed human science to its absolute limits. Back on the bridge, Morrison called his senior officers together. Lieutenant Brooks, Lieutenant Walsh, Chief Medical Officer Dr. Sarah Martinez, and Security Chief Commander Michael Thompson gathered around the captain's chair. In approximately 6 hours, we're going to do something that will change the course of human history, Morrison began. I want you all to understand what we're facing. The Zephyrians have conquered 47 different species. They've never been defeated in battle. They think we're just another primitive race to be enslaved or destroyed. Sir, interrupted Commander Thompson, what exactly are we carrying? The crew is asking questions. They know something big is happening. Morrison looked at each of his officers in turn. We're carrying a prototype weapon that Earth scientists have been developing in secret for 3 years. It's based on theoretical physics that most people thought was impossible. Dr. Rachel Thompson led the project. What kind of weapon? Asked Dr. Martinez. The kind that uses the universe itself as ammunition, Morrison replied. I can't give you more details for security reasons. But I will tell you this, after today, no alien species will ever underestimate humanity again. Throughout the ship, the crew continued their duties with quiet efficiency. In the mess hall, groups of sailors ate their meals and talked in low voices. Everyone could feel the tension in the air. They all knew they were surrounded by an enemy fleet that could destroy them in seconds, but they trusted their captain. I heard we're carrying some kind of secret weapon, whispered Petty Officer Lisa Chen to her friend. Whatever it is, it better be good, replied Engineer Tom Wilson. I counted over 300 alien ships out there. Each one is bigger than anything in our navy. Meanwhile, on the Zephyrian flagship, Admiral Kethvar was reviewing battle plans with his commanders. Holographic displays showed different attack patterns, each one designed to destroy the human ship quickly and efficiently. I want this to be spectacular, the Admiral said. When we broadcast the destruction of this human vessel across the galaxy, every other primitive species will think twice before defying us. Commander Veltran studied the tactical display. Sir, perhaps we should capture some of the humans alive for study. Their technology is primitive, but their bravery is interesting. No, the Admiral replied firmly. Complete destruction sends a stronger message. We will leave nothing but debris and radiation. As the final hours ticked away, Captain Morrison made his way through different sections of his ship. He visited the engine room, where technicians worked to keep the ship's power systems running smoothly. He stopped by the medical bay, where Dr. Martinez was preparing for potential casualties. He even visited the crew quarters, where off-duty personnel were trying to rest before what everyone knew would be a historic battle. Captain, called Ensign Patricia Davis as he passed through the navigation section, will you tell us what's really happening? The crew is scared, but they're trying not to show it. Morrison stopped and looked at the young woman. She was barely 25 years old, fresh out of the academy, and this was her first deep space assignment. Ensign, in a few hours, you're going to see something that no human has ever seen before. Something that will make you proud to be human. Trust in your training, trust in your shipmates, and trust in the fact that Earth doesn't send us out here without giving us the tools we need to succeed. As the deadline approached, Morrison returned to his bridge. The alien fleet had finished positioning itself in perfect attack formation. Energy weapons were charging, and he could see fighters launching from the larger ships. The Zephyrians were preparing for what they thought would be an easy victory. Morrison looked at the weapon status display on his command console. A single green light indicated that humanity's most dangerous secret was ready to be unleashed. Soon, the aliens would learn that laughing at humanity had been the biggest mistake of their very long lives. The 24 hours were almost over. Captain Morrison stood at the center of his bridge, his hands clasped behind his back. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. Everyone knew this was the moment that would decide everything. Through the main viewing window, the alien fleet looked like a city of lights floating in space. 312 crystal ships glowed with deadly energy, their weapon ports open and ready to fire. The Defiant sat in the middle of them like a small fish surrounded by hungry sharks. Captain, reported Lieutenant Emma Brooks, enemy ships are moving into final attack positions. Their weapons are fully charged. All stations report ready, sir, added Lieutenant David Walsh. Morrison nodded slowly. He had been a military officer for 23 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. In his jacket pocket, he carried written orders from Earth Command. The paper was signed by the President herself, authorizing him to use humanity's most dangerous weapon. The communication system crackled to life, and Admiral Kethvar's crystal face appeared on the main screen. The alien leader looked even more confident than before. His blue eyes glowed with cold satisfaction. Human Captain, the Admiral said, your time has expired. My patience grows thin. Will you surrender your 3-star systems to the Empire, or shall we demonstrate the price of defying us? Morrison stepped forward so the alien could see him clearly. Behind him, his bridge crew waited silently. In the weapon bay deep inside the ship, Dr. Rachel Thompson and Chief Engineer Robert Hayes stood ready at their control stations. Admiral Kethvar, Morrison said in a calm voice, humanity has considered your demands very carefully. And your answer? Morrison looked directly into the alien's glowing eyes. Our answer is negative. The Admiral's crystal face twisted with anger. Then you choose death, primitive fool. Your ship will be turned to dust, and your colonies will burn. You had your chance for mercy. Perhaps, Morrison replied. But Admiral, before you attack, let me show you something about human technology. The alien laughed, the sound like breaking glass. Your technology? Captain, our weakest scout ship could destroy your vessel in seconds. What could you possibly show me that would matter? Morrison turned to his weapons officer. Chief Engineer Hayes had come up from the weapon bay to personally handle the firing controls. The big man's hands were steady as he placed them on the control panel. Admiral, Morrison said, still looking at the alien on screen, you've spent the last 24 hours studying our ship. You've laughed at our metal hull, our chemical engines, our simple weapons. You think you understand human technology. I understand that it is pathetic, the Admiral replied. Morrison allowed himself a small smile. Then let me educate you. Robert, fire. Hayes pressed a single button. Deep in the weapon bay, magnetic coils activated with a sound like thunder. A metal cylinder no bigger than a torpedo shot out from the Defiant's forward railgun. To the alien senses, it looked like nothing special, just another primitive kinetic projectile moving through space. Admiral Kethvar stared at his tactical displays in confusion. That's it? You fire one metal slug at my fleet of 300 ships? Captain, have you lost your mind? The projectile passed harmlessly through the alien formation, traveling at incredible speed. It flew past the nearest enemy ships, past the middle layers of the fleet, past the outer defensive ring. None of the aliens even bothered to shoot at it. Your weapon missed everything, laughed Commander Veltran from his position beside the Admiral. It's flying away into empty space. Morrison checked his watch. Not quite empty space, Commander. Robert, how long until detonation? 30 seconds, Captain. The alien officers looked at each other with amusement. Subcommander Zixtal shook his crystal head. They think one small explosion in empty space will frighten us. These humans are even more primitive than we thought. Morrison counted down silently. 20 seconds. 15. 10. 50,000 kilometers behind the alien fleet, the metal projectile reached the end of its programmed flight path. Internal mechanisms activated, and the magnetic containment field that had kept humanity's most dangerous creation under control suddenly shut off. For exactly 1 second, nothing happened. Then a point of absolute darkness appeared in space. It was smaller than an atom at first, but it grew quickly. Space itself began to bend around it as gravity stronger than anything in the natural universe pulled matter inward. The darkness spread, becoming visible as it swallowed light itself. What is that? Admiral Kethvar demanded, staring at his sensors. Dr. Rachel Thompson, watching from the Defiant's bridge, spoke quietly. It's a controlled gravitational singularity, Admiral. What your people might call a black hole. The alien's glowing eyes went wide with terror. Impossible. No species has ever weaponized a singularity. Humanity just did, Morrison replied calmly. The artificial black hole grew rapidly, its gravitational pull reaching out like invisible hands. The outer ships of the alien fleet, caught at the edge of the expanding event horizon, began to stretch and twist as different parts of their hulls experienced different gravitational forces. Full retreat. Admiral Kethvar screamed to his fleet. All ships, emergency jump to hyperspace. But it was too late. The gravitational field was expanding faster than the ships could escape. Crystal hulls designed to withstand energy weapons and projectile impacts were helpless against the fundamental forces of physics itself. The first ships to be caught screamed across all communication frequencies as their crews realized what was happening. Beautiful crystal vessels that had conquered dozens of worlds were pulled apart like toys in the hands of an angry giant. This cannot be happening. Veltran shouted as his own ship was pulled backward toward the growing darkness. We are the Zephyrian Empire. We have never been defeated. Morrison watched through his viewing window as ship after ship disappeared into the hungry darkness. The aliens' advanced shields flickered and failed. Their quantum weapons fired desperately into the black hole, but energy and matter alike were swallowed without effect. Captain, Dr. Thompson reported, gravitational cascade is proceeding as calculated. The singularity will consume the entire enemy fleet within 8 minutes. Admiral Kethvar's final transmission came through filled with static and terror. What have you done? What have you done to us? Morrison looked at the alien's terrified face one last time. We turned the universe itself into our weapon, Admiral. Perhaps next time you'll think twice before calling humans primitive. The transmission cut off as the flagship was pulled into the event horizon. Within minutes, 312 of the most advanced warships in the galaxy had vanished completely, consumed by humanity's ultimate weapon. All that remained was empty space and a slowly shrinking point of darkness that would soon evaporate back into nothingness. Captain Morrison stood on his bridge, watching the last traces of the artificial black hole disappear into nothing. Where moments before 312 alien warships had filled space with their crystal light, now there was only empty darkness and distant stars. The silence was complete and absolute. Singularity has fully evaporated, Captain, reported Dr. Rachel Thompson from her science station. Gravitational readings are back to normal. It's like the fleet was never here. Lieutenant Emma Brooks stared at her sensor display in amazement. Sir, I'm not reading any debris, any energy signatures, nothing at all. They're completely gone. Morrison nodded slowly. He felt no joy in what had just happened, only a deep sadness that it had been necessary. 300,000 alien lives had just been snuffed out in less than 10 minutes. But they had threatened to enslave or destroy billions of humans, and sometimes terrible choices had to be made. David, he said to his communications officer, open a channel on all Zephyrian military frequencies. I want this message to reach every alien ship, every base, every colony in their empire. Lieutenant David Walsh worked quickly at his console. Channel open, sir. You're broadcasting across their entire territory. Morrison stepped forward, his weathered face serious and calm. He knew that thousands of alien commanders, millions of Zephyrian civilians, and leaders of dozens of other species would hear these words. What he said now would echo across the galaxy for generations. To the Zephyrian Empire and all who would threaten humanity, he began, his voice steady and clear. I am Captain James Morrison of the United Earthship Defiant. Moments ago, your fleet demanded that humanity surrender 3 of our colony worlds. You brought over 300 warships to enforce this demand. You laughed at our technology. You called us primitive. You mocked our weapons. He paused, looking out at the empty space where the alien fleet had been. You were wrong. On distant worlds throughout Zephyrian space, alien leaders gathered around communication screens, listening in growing horror. Admiral Zethmore, commanding the Empire's Second Fleet near the Rigel system, watched the transmission with disbelief. Continue monitoring all human communications, he ordered his staff. This must be some kind of trick. But Morrison's voice continued across the void. You fail to understand the most important truth about the human species. We don't just fight with the weapons we have. We make new ones. We turn the impossible into reality. We take the very forces that govern the universe and bend them to our will. On the bridge of the Defiant, Chief Engineer Robert Hayes was running system diagnostics. Captain, the railgun is undamaged and ready for another shot if needed. Dr. Thompson's weapon performed exactly as designed. Morrison acknowledged with a nod but continued his broadcast. What you witnessed today was not our most advanced technology. It was not our largest weapon. It was simply our answer to those who would threaten innocent human lives. We created a controlled black hole and used it to remove your entire fleet from existence. Across Zephyrian territory, panic was spreading. On the capital world of Zeph Prime, Emperor Caxthal convened an emergency council. The Crystal Palace filled with terrified officials and military commanders. How is this possible? Demanded General Vixtau. Our intelligence report said the humans were centuries behind us in technology. Apparently our intelligence was wrong, the Emperor replied grimly. Send immediate ceasefire orders to all our fleets near human space. We need time to understand what we're dealing with. Morrison's transmission continued. We did not want this war. We sought peace and cooperation. But you chose to threaten us with slavery and death. You chose to mock our desire for a diplomatic solution. You chose to bring 300 ships to intimidate one human vessel. He looked directly into the camera, and his eyes seemed to pierce through space itself to stare into the souls of every alien leader listening. That was your mistake. Because now the entire galaxy knows what happens when someone threatens humanity. On monitoring stations throughout known space, other alien species were recording the transmission. The Andromedans, who had been considering their own expansion into human territory, immediately cancelled their military preparations. The Centauri Republic sent urgent messages to their ambassadors, instructing them to begin immediate peace negotiations with Earth. The weapon we use today will be shared with all human colonies, Morrison announced. Every world under Earth's protection now has access to singularity weapons. Any species that threatens human civilians will face the same fate as Admiral Kethvar's fleet. In the Zephyrian capital, emergency meetings were being held in every government building. Trade Minister Kuil Van burst into the Emperor's council chamber with urgent news. Your Majesty, our economic advisors are recommending immediate peace negotiations with the humans. If they can create artificial black holes, their technology might be valuable for peaceful purposes as well. Emperor Caxthal considered this carefully. The Zephyrian Empire had built its power through conquest, but they were also pragmatic. Send word to our best diplomats. Prepare a formal apology and request for peace talks. Morrison concluded his message with words that would become legendary throughout the galaxy. To any species considering aggression against humanity, remember this day. Remember that we are not the primitive race you think we are. We are the species that turned physics itself into our weapon. We are the people who made the universe our ally. He paused one final time, letting the weight of his words sink in. This is your only warning. Attack us, and face the consequences. Leave us in peace, and we will do the same for you. The choice is yours. The transmission ended, and the bridge of the Defiant fell silent. Morrison looked around at his crew, seeing pride and determination on every face. Set course for Earth, he ordered. It's time to go home. As the Defiant engaged its hyperspace drive and vanished into the void, its message continued to spread across the galaxy. Within hours, every major alien civilization had received recordings of the battle. The species that had once dismissed humanity as insignificant newcomers now spoke of them in whispered, fearful tones. The humans had changed everything. They had shown that intelligence and determination could overcome any technological advantage. They had proven that sometimes the best weapon was not the most complex, but the most creative. And they had taught the galaxy a lesson that would never be forgotten. Never underestimate a species clever enough to weaponize the fundamental forces of creation itself.